Hello, everyone. I'll speak quietly into the microphone because I'm typically a very loud person. My name is Rabbi Rebecca Schatz. I'm the Assistant Rabbi and Education Director at Peninsula Sinai Congregation in Foster City, so not too far from here. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to our two panelists. So before we get started, they want us to silence our cell phones or put them on Torah mode. There will be a Q&A. Thank you for the laugh. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. We want to really be respectful and don't use the Q&A as an opportunity to just make statements, but to really go back to our elementary school days and use those W's of who, what, when, where, why, and the occasional how, if you would like, to make sure that our questions are asked and appropriately answered. So our topic for this afternoon and our distinguished teachers are Rabbi Adam Mintz and Dr. Tova Hartman. The session focuses on texts and ideas that showcase how peoplehood can serve as a uniting force for world Jewry, especially between diaspora Jews and Israeli Jews. So first, Dr. Tova Hartman is the Dean of Humanities at Ono Academic College, the largest private college in Israel. Her last book, Are You Not a Man of God? Devotion, Betrayal, and Social Criticism in Jewish Tradition, brought feminist theory and relational psychology to bear on Jewish theology and culture. Her prior book, Feminism Encounters Jewish Tradition, Resistance, and Accommodation, won a National Jewish Book Award. Tova's first book, appropriately subversive, Modern Mothers and Traditional Religions, based on her doctoral thesis under Carol Gilligan, was a comparative study of the experiences of traditional Catholic and Jewish women as mothers and agents of socialization in their communities and cultures. This brought her into the world of interfaith research and social action, where she maintains a vital presence as a speaker and teacher at conferences relating to scholarship, religion, and social change. Tova is one of the founders of Shira Chadasha, which is a beautiful minyan, if you've never been, in Jerusalem, the first Orthodox egalitarian synagogue. She continues to publish scholarly and popular articles and speaks regularly at a diverse range of venues across North America, Europe, and Israel. So thank you, Tova. Okay. Rabbi Adam Mintz is the rabbi of Keilat Re'im Ahuvim, a modern Orthodox community he founded in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He is also the director of 929 English, a web-based project that promotes the daily study of a chapter of Tanakh and provides an opportunity for English-speaking Jewry around the world to engage in a conversation centered around the daily chapter. In addition, Rabbi Mintz is a member of the Talmud faculty, or factory, at Yeshivat Maharat, and has taught as an adjunct assistant professor at City College, New York, for the past 6 years. Rabbi Mintz received his rabbinical ordination at Yeshiva University, where he received both Yora Yora and Yadin Yadin Smicha. He obtained his PhD in Jewish history at NYU, where he wrote his dissertation on the topic of Halacha in America, the history of City Eruvin, 1894 through 1962. So thank you to Tova and Rabbi Mintz for being here all the way from Israel and all the way from New York. Thank you.
You want to start? Well, you can start the reading.
Okay, I'm going to thank you so much for coming and for joining us. And well, there are a lot of different kinds of sessions here today, and we want to study together with you. And hopefully we can discuss some really nice topics, some relevant topics from the study, but there's nothing better than studying together, and there's nothing better than studying together on Chanukah, a discussion of Chanukah. So what I want to do is I'm going to start reading, and then we'll be able to discuss. The Rambam, Maimonides, divides his Mishneh Torah into 14 books, and then within each of the books, he discusses the laws that are relevant to that topic of the book. This book is called the Book of Zmanim, of times or of cyclical holidays. And here at the end, the Rambam talks about Megillah v'Chanukah, which means the laws of Purim and Chanukah. I'll read it in English. How many candles should one light on Chanukah? The mitzvah is that a single candle should be lit in each and every house, regardless of whether there are many members of the household or merely one person lives there. So the basic commandment is to light one candle. Doesn't matter if you live by yourself or you live with 10 other people. There's one candle on the first night, and there's one candle tonight on the 8th night. A person who performs the mitzvah in a beautiful and conscientious manner should light candles for every member of the household, whether male or female. That, in there's a whole bunch of things. Number one is that, first of all, what does it mean beautiful and conscientious? And of course here, where, I don't know who Eliyahu Toger is, this comes from Chabad.org, the word in Hebrew is hamahader. And that's the first interesting thing that maybe we'll talk about is, what is hidur mitzvah? What does it mean to make things more beautiful? What does it mean to make mitzvot more beautiful? That's a great idea. Here, the idea of hidur mitzvah is that you should light a candle for every member of the household. Meaning, if there are 10 people in your household, you light 10 candles. No recognition of the number of nights, just one per person, whether male or female. Now, we know enough to know that that doesn't always appear, right? Is that fair enough? That doesn't, but luckily, since I'm starting, I'm saved because it does appear here. And let's just give I'm going to turn it over to Tova in 1 second, but I'll just give the background. The rabbis teach us that women and men have an equal obligation to light Hanukkah candles. There's absolutely no difference between the obligation of men and the obligation of women to light Hanukkah candles. And they base it on a kind of familiar rabbinic dictum called Af Sha'afein Hayu Boto Hanes, that the women were involved in the Hanukkah miracle. Now that's a little tricky exactly who the woman was who was involved in the Hanukkah miracle. It seems to be that it's Judith. But the problem is, now I'm going to give it to Tova. Okay. Here you go. I said my piece.
No, here I think that, first of all, the notion, Afhena Yubotones, they were also in that miracle. I just can say personally, it was one of the things that I brought when I was at my years of begging to be included. I just followed those years in one of the sadder times. But it was like saying, what do you mean, Afhena Yubotones on Hanukkah? Well, weren't they in every other miracle? Why on Hanukkah? Did you just know, what is it? So we know it's on Hanukkah, Purim, and the 4 kosot, the 4 cups in Pesach. That's what the Gemara talks about. And then you realize that people didn't understand what was it, and then you see there's an argument between what did it mean that they were in the miracle. Was it that as women they were also in danger, like in the other 3 holidays? Or were women actively involved in doing something, in a miracle doing thing? Now, just the fact that they're arguing about it already means that they understand. I think, I'm totally projecting myself onto this. I'm not saying this is the right interpretation. I just have the same tone. But for me, what it meant was that they obviously understood, they might have understood that this has an immense potential for seriously looking at the text differently. And then they had to say, so was it Yehudit? All of a sudden, all the women of the world now, all of womanhood, are celebrating Yehudit? I mean, that's so bizarre in terms of the Jewish thing. No, I mean, it's really not. So the question that I used to ask is that if there is a place that actually understands that women really were there, of course they were there, but weren't they everywhere? So you can say why here and not there, one can, or one can use the term, what I used in the other time when I said, do we bring it then this term that was from margin and we move it to center? That this term did exist in the history of Jewish traditional language, as opposed to why does one include another person? Because they were there. So you want to tell me that the women weren't there on Sinai? Of course they were there. They got the Torah then. So just I'm saying that it could be used as a way of rethinking certain assumptions, or of course it could be used as saying this is what they said about this, and leave it and don't push it. I try to push it. I try to re-engage in places that I think there's some integrity in re-engaging. I'm not saying it's the meaning at all, but there was a notion that they were there. And that's where I think that it's, again, we can use it as a limited place or enlarge it. This was mentioned, though, again, as I said, during Hanukkah, Purim, and the 4 cups of wine during Pesach.
I'll just kind of support Tova's understanding with a historical note. It's interesting that we know about Yehudit or Judith. There's a book in the Apocrypha called Judith. And it's a story about a Jewish heroine. And the problem with that story is that it takes place in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. It takes place in the time of the destruction of the first temple. The first temple was destroyed around the year 586, 587 BCE. The story of Hanukkah takes place in 164 BCE. So that's a little bit of a problem, right? That's not even a problem like, you make a little mistake, right? That's a whole different... So the question is, how did it get connected? The answer is, of course, that nobody knows. The theory of the historians is that they wanted to kind of encourage the Jews, and maybe here you say the men and the women. You see, when you have the story of Hanukkah, we know was guerrilla warfare. It wasn't traditional warfare. And therefore, they really needed participation of everybody. They were a small group. I don't know what everybody did exactly, but they needed participation of everybody. And you needed to encourage people, right? It's the coach at halftime trying to get the team to come back from a 30-point deficit kind of thing. So what do? You need a good story. So for whatever reason, they chose the story of Judith. Now that, Tova, is your point, and that is that it's relevant. Somehow the women's role became relevant in this story, and that's reflected.
But how come the story of Hannah shows up in Second Maccabees, though, and that doesn't become a part of this at all?
Oh, why just Judith and not Hannah? Yeah.
Does Josephus say anything about Judith?
That he saw her.
I
Also, like he saw her.
don't know the answer.
Okay, and I have one more question. So back to maybe a bit very basic. These 3 things, Hanukkah, Megillah, and the 4 kosot, the whole idea of mitzvot positive mitzvot that are time bound, that women are exempt. These are time bound, aren't they? Or is it Hanukkah candles? Isn't it time bound?
It's not, yeah, there's many hours that you could do it, but of course it's time bound.
That's why you need the explanation, Sha'af hein hayu boto hanesa, women were involved. If it wasn't time-bound, what's an example of something that's not time-bound? Putting up a mezuzah on your house is a perfect example of something that's not time-bound. It's not related to time. It doesn't matter when you move in or when you come home at night. Right. If you have a home, then you need to put up a mezuzah. Since it's not time-bound, women are obligated to put up a mezuzah, the Gemara says, the same way men are. The reason that Hanukkah, Megillah, and the 4 kosot are exceptional is because even though they're time-bound, nevertheless, the Talmud says that women are obligated, sha'af hein hayu boto hanes.
So that phrase, that they were involved in the miracle, is the thing that makes it different than other.
That's right. Right. Okay, let's go on. A person who is even more conscientious in his performance of the mitzvah than this, and observes the mitzvah in the most desirable manner, should light candles for every member of the household. A candle for each individual, whether male or female, on the first night. On each subsequent night, he should add a candle for each of the members of the household. Now, that also is amazing. V'hamahader yoter al zeh, v'yosem mitzvah min hamuvchar. So not only is there an idea of making the mitzvah better, but there are 2 levels. You make the mitzvah better, and then you make the mitzvah wow better, right? Really, really better. So that in itself is fascinating. So what do? So it's per member of the house, per night. So tonight, when there are 10 people in the house, how many candles? 80. And just in case, the shamus doesn't matter. You can have 1 shamus or 8 or 10 or 20 or 50, doesn't matter. And the Rambam, just in case you're confused by exactly how to do the math, you're mathematically challenged. So in 2, the Rambam says, what does the above imply? When there are 10 members of a household, On the first night, one lights 10 candles. On the second night, 20. On the third night, 30. Until the eighth night, one lights 80 candles. So let's stop for a minute and let's talk about this idea of Hidur Mitzvah. The idea that you can do something on kind of a basic level and you can do it better. And when it comes to Hanukkah candles, you can even do it better. And then let me just add the second question. Why is it that lighting per members of the household and then per members of the household and per nights of Hanukkah, why is that better? And I think that's kind of a nice idea too.
Very nice.
It's more expensive. Yeah.
Good. Somebody, it's interesting, when I was talking about this, I spoke to Tova last week before Tova flew, when it was, Wednesday, right?
I had a voice.
Yeah, Wednesday. So Tova said, let's study the last chapter in the Rambam and the Laws of Megillah. And I thought that was really interesting. And that afternoon I was teaching in Maharat, and I had promised them to do something on Hanukkah. So I said, well, this is my opportunity. So we did this as well. And then we talked about that question. So they also said, maybe it's preferable, maybe it's glorifying the mitzvah because it's more expensive. That definitely is possible. I think the honest answer is that they used olive oil in those days, and a lot of things were dependent on oil. Oil was very plentiful in that area at the time, so probably that wasn't a consideration. So it's definitely an insight, but I think probably that wasn't what they were referring to.
Right, and it was kind of a joke when I said it, but I'm also thinking like just more precious. That the time that it takes, that the concentration, that you do need more resources and like more time, you know, that there's more engagement. I mean, who knows? But it's really, I wasn't just thinking in terms of that.
Just someone in the back, and then we'll come back.
Well, it's like a representative democracy, sort of. It says lighting for, like everybody, it's a little too cumbersome maybe for everybody to come up and in a line and light. So you're doing it for, in recognition of everybody who's there, so that their participation is sort of made manifest and more real. And then even more real is that you do it each night, so that it's not just a figment of your remembering the first night. It's magnifying the actual people who are there and giving them a voice, sort of.
Now, you suggest that one person lights. I don't think anybody does it like that. I mean, if you have 10 menorahs, everybody lights their own, right? Yeah,
But
sorry.
you know, I wanted actually to follow what he was saying, because if you look at the Hebrew, it's madlik is singular, and it says when there's 10 people, you still one person light. You could have said grammatically, בלילה הראשון מדליקים 10 נרות, but then it's מדליק, and then follow it up. It says, עד שנמצא מדליק בליל שמיני 80 נרות. It could have been if everyone lit their own candle, he could have said מדליקים בליל שמיני 80 נרות. So when I was looking at this from that grammatical perspective, even though the women were included, they're not saying that they're actually lighted. And to me, that was like, It's like, you didn't get it, but let me take it back. Just, wave it in front of me. So, yeah.
That if the mitzvah is to publicize the lighting, then is it possible just bringing that much light into your home at once could also be part of performing the mitzvah? Because 80 candles is going to generate a fair amount of brightness.
Brightness outside.
Outside, absolutely. Whatever's in the house is just going to spill out if you have opening. It's a lot of candles.
That's interesting. Let's collect, yeah.
Following what Ann is saying, I was thinking, if you go back to the antecedents of this holiday and say that they're the pagan solstice, etc., and it's the Feast of Lights, so the more, the better, just like at the Pesach Seder, the more you do it, the better it is. You want more lights. The most lights that you can possibly imagine live up to the name Chag Urim, the Festival of Lights, so you want more.
Okay. Let's look at 3 for a minute, and I think some of the points you make about the more light are going to be interesting. It is common custom in all our cities in Spain. Maimonides lives where? Where does he live? No, where does He lives basically in Egypt, right? The Mishnah Torah is written in Egypt, but he's writing for the Spanish tradition, right? Bechol areinu bisfarad, that a single candle is lit for all the members of the household on the first night. We proceed to add a new candle on each and every night until on the 8th night, 8 candles are lit. This practice is followed regardless of whether there are many members of the household or only one man is lighting candles. Now that's interesting because in the previous law, Maimonides had told us that we should light, or at least to do it the nicest, you should light per members of the household per night, meaning 8th night, 80 candles. He pulls back in 3. And in 3 he says, no, tonight how many do you light? 8. Okay? By the way, what are the different customs today? Who does what? Do we light tonight? Do we light 8 or do we like 8? Do we like 80?
Depending on how many.
Do we, if we happen to live in a house with 10 people, do we light tonight? Do we light 80 or do we light 8?
80.
Uh-oh.
How many kids
Not
do you
my
guys have?
family.
You only light 1 menorah in your house.
We have one for everybody. One with everybody.
It's a very different thing. And in Israel, the poor people of the former generation, even the very from in Mea Shearim, that
Just
only
one.
led one. And
That's
that was a
interesting.
real economic.
Yeah, that's right. So the truth is there are different customs. Hasidim to this day only light 1. If you find a Hasidic family tonight, I don't care how many children they have, there is 1 menorah lit in that house. They follow the Rambam. Now, let's look at that for a minute, everybody together. What is the difference in terms of all the things we're talking about, in terms of light, in terms of participation, between lighting 80 candles tonight and 8 candles, if I just want to oversimplify, meaning there are 10 people in your house, tonight are you going to light 1 menorah of 8 candles, or are you going to light 10 menorahs, 80 candles? Yeah.
Well, it seemed that the difference is if you're doing it collectively or you're doing it individually, right? So if you follow the Hasidic custom or the custom here that Rambam was talking about, you're saying we are all one unit. We are all essentially one entity. And as one entity, we light collectively, we light together. It's like saying, when you light Shabbos candles, typically you light 1 set of Shabbos candles for the household. Not everybody would typically light Shabbos candles separately for themselves if you're all members of the same family and you all live together. Conversely, if you're doing it individually, you're saying each and every one of us is celebrating the Nes, the miracle of Hanukkah, and each and every one of us individually is therefore affirming our connection to the miracle in the history by our own Chanukiah and our own lighting, and each have to do it separately because it's a miracle for us. Like, behold our door, we all know that each one of us was redeemed from slavery in Egypt. We have to do it ourselves.
Very good, very nice. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, the third option that's not even considered is what we might call collective individuality. If you go to a Catholic church for communion, every single person in the church takes communion. They've streamlined the process so it's one experience, but each one does it individually with the wine and the wafer. So there's no option here of each individual doing something that contributes to the collectivity, whether it's with 1 menorah or several.
You mean it's either each one gets his or her
Her
own,
own,
or
or
it's one for everybody?
One agent for everyone, and not set it up so that there's a collective action in which individuality is retained.
That's nice. Really nice.
Just one of
Because
our
I'm from the
options.
Catholic
Fantastic.
Church.
Here you go. Yes.
Catholics have good ideas.
They really do.
Over the years, I've realized that Hanukkah is the one holiday where there can be a few interpretations and still it can be halachically right. A little here, a little there. You can have one Chanukiah and it works, and it's the mitzvah and you're doing it. And if you can have one for each one, there are families that have been pretty observant or very observant. On the 8th day, then each one of the kids would light one of the candles. They pass the shamash along, and it still seems.
Here you go.
There's
And
some
it still
individuality.
seems that it's okay, because there's so many other places in Judaism, especially for the place of women in Judaism,
that, especially for Lashem Chinuch, maybe, that we want these, especially the girls, they each have their own Chanukiah for Hanukkah, and finally be able to do something, no matter what kind of Judaism path they're going down. This is considered A-okay. You're doing it, and you're not going over the top from this side, and you're not going under the other side. It's like, it's considered right. Everybody has a zchut to light a Chanukiah, and that doesn't happen too many times in Orthodox Judaism. So.
That's nice.
By the way, the thing about Hidur Mitzvah, among Hasidim, I learned many years ago that they don't decorate their sukkah, because the sukkah, or this Chabad Hasidim, the sukkah already is supposed to be beautiful, so there are no pictures. So that goes with this, that you just.
Very nice. Let's just raise something coming from here, and that is, we're talking a lot about the experience of lighting the menorah of the Chanukiah. Who is the lighting of the Chanukiah for? Is it for the people at home? Is it for the people who are going to see it in the window? Those of us who've been in Israel for Hanukkah, what do some people in Israel do? Where do they light their menorah? Did you ever see that? Not only in the window. Has anybody been in Israel recently?
Where they're supposed to have water meters, and instead they have these little holes in their front.
Outside. Right, that's what I like. That's what, outside, right?
Originally, this apparently this was supposed to be.
Why is that? Why in Israel do they light outside? Who's it for?
Each other?
Yeah.
So, in a previous class this week, on passages from the Talmud, the emphasis was on you're required to publicize the miracle. And so if you're not doing it in some external manner outside or on display, then you're not fulfilling that important aspect of what rabbis were telling you was important about Hanukkah. And then the question you raised, so who are you publicizing it to? Depends, right? So as we're reading this about the Jews in Spain, what are their circumstances? Are they living in amongst Gentiles? Are they living in closed communities only among other Jews? And, it doesn't seem like you could get one answer to that question. To whom are we publicizing it? So when we take the giant 10-foot menorah, to downtown Palo Alto with Chabad, I don't think we're doing that to publicize the miracle to, we could do it here and be surrounded by other Jews.
Have one here.
Yeah, I think
But-
that when we,
It seems to me, though, that just because you're doing it in a public way does not mean you're doing it for the public. There's something about your affirmation of the miracle that it has an effect on you, regardless of whether the public even understands the meaning or the public changes from a general public to a Jewish public or something like that.
Good. Oh, sorry, and we'll get back to you.
you said it beautifully. I was just thinking when we do it in Israel and we put it outside, it's more creating a unity of the people, even when there's so many times in our history where we didn't feel united, or that there is a problem, there's some people against us. This is a way of us doing it to unite ourselves, to have a sense of peoplehood. If we're hiding it, we lack that. So when we put it out there, to me, it's reformation for us as people.
Growing up in Jerusalem, when we lit the Chanukiot, we felt part of the village. Okay? Now, my parents made all, it was a big deal. Okay, now I live here. And I'll tell you a very short story from last night. We were in downtown San Francisco with my little one, and there's a biggest Christmas tree I think I've ever seen in the world. And she goes, "What? Hanukkah's over?" And suddenly, Chabad bellows out. I've never seen such a big Chanukiah in my life in Union Square. And Chabad bellows out the brachot and bursts into songs, and everybody around us, Jews, we were singing our hearts out. And the Gentiles, I don't know what to call them really, but other people who weren't celebrating Hanukkah, were just standing around and kind of like applauding. And I had this little moment of epiphany. I don't know how to explain it. It was like, the thing of lighting a Chanukiah in public and still feeling safe in America today is not muvan me'elav anymore. And I want to tell you, it was a very strong feeling that we did not attend, and my husband turned to me and he goes, how do you always know when to show up? It was something special that it became like our little Hanukkah, and many Hanukkah stories that we have. This became something else. And this was another layer in, I thought, the many reasons, well, I think, of lighting a Chanukiah. There was something very powerful there, and I would have never done something so public. Like why? You know, but it was something there, and it was very, very special, very different than being just part of the village in Jerusalem. We're not 100% part of the village, but there was something, some unity there, and again, it was for us, the village, and also for the people around us. It was very powerful.
Okay. Daled. 4. When a candle holder has 2 openings, it can be counted as for 2 individuals. The following rules apply when one fills a bowl with oil and surrounds it with wicks. If one covers it with a utensil, each of the wicks is considered to be a separate candle. If one does not cover it with a utensil, it is considered to be a large fire and is not counted even as a single candle. And that's always the beauty of all the stuff. We could talk about these grand notions, and it's always in the detail, right? And you understand that means you have a bowl of oil. So is it 1 candle? Is it 8 candles? You want to say you want to maximize it. So the question is whether you can get, how many wicks can you get and how can you separate the oil? It's fantastic. The Hanukkah candles, 5, sorry. The Hanukkah candles should not be kindled before sunset. Instead, they should be kindled at sunset. One should not light later or earlier. Why sunset? Just simple. What does Rambam mean? Why sunset? Yeah, dark. Because this is about visibility, right? You can see it better at night. Should one, by the way, we don't do this exactly. The Rambam thinks you should light at sunset. We generally wait till nightfall to light. Should one forget, or even if one purposely did not light at sunset, one may light afterwards until there are no longer any passers-by in the marketplace, okay? How long a duration of time is this? Approximately half an hour or slightly more than that. Should this time pass, one should not kindle the lights. Now, we live in a society wherever you live, whether it's Jerusalem, New York, Palo Alto, people are not off the street a half hour after nightfall, right? Obviously, they're probably not off the street at all, right? And so the answer is we can light Hanukkah candles all night long. This is, but just to explain what he means, this is assuming what? This is pre-street lights. Right? It's all about the street lights. If you don't have street lights, then you can't be out at night. One should place enough oil in the lamp so that it will continue burning until there are no longer any passers-by in the marketplace. If one lit it and it became extinguished, one need not light it a second time. If it remained burning until there are no longer passers-by in the marketplace, one may extinguish it or remove it if one desires. Means there's no more obligation once there are no more people on the street. Yeah.
So is he, by implication, saying that one of the rationales, anyway, of lighting this at all is because there are people in the marketplace that are going to see it explicitly, that it has to be done so that people in the marketplace can see it.
And therefore, you have to light it in a place where people will see it, right? And therefore, right.
It's not about your own thing, it's about...
And what about if you happen to be one night of Hanukkah in a place where there is nobody? You're in the desert, you're in a deserted island, what would you do? What would you do?
No, you're obligated to light. He said, "Do you light and put it out?"
No, so I mean, that's what I'm asking. What would you do?
In a farmhouse, you don't have to...
Well, yeah, whatever the case is. Whatever the case is, you happen to be lighting in a place where no one is going to see your Hanukkah lights.
What I've done is light it, go outside and look through the window. Literally, I've done that.
That's good. So, can you publicize the miracle to yourself?
Why not? I'm the only one around.
I mean, he doesn't talk about it. Of course, that's a nice idea. Can you publicize the miracle to yourself? Yeah.
I think you can. A lot of things that we do are to keep on tradition. Even if we're the last one standing, we need to keep on the tradition, keep the light going. Maybe I'm becoming a little too mushy with this holiday, but that's how I feel.
Okay, good. I mean, the answer is the Rambam doesn't talk about every case, but that's a nice idea. The idea is you can publicize it to yourself. By the way, if you want to publicize it to yourself, you don't have to bother going outside. You can just stand in front of the candles and look at it, probably, right?
But you're not allowed to.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
We live in an apartment building on the 7th floor, and I remember my kids were young, that used to be their treat every night to go downstairs to the street to see whether you could actually see the candles or not. Okay, so it's the same tradition. All oils and all wicks are acceptable for use in Hanukkah lamps. Even the oils that are not drawn after the wick, and even those wicks that do not hold the light well. Okay. Even on the Sabbath nights of Hanukkah, it is permitted to light with oils and wicks that are forbidden to be used for the Sabbath lights. That's not for us. That's because that's a law about the Sabbath. That if you light with wicks or you light candles that are not going to burn well, we're afraid that you might what on Shabbos?
Go out.
What relight them?
Relight it or move the oil or rearrange the wick, which would not be allowed on Shabbos. But that's not a consideration for Hanukkah, so therefore you're allowed to use those wicks and those oils. The reason for this leniency is that it is forbidden to use the Hanukkah candles for one's own purposes, whether on the Sabbath or on the weekday. It is even forbidden to use their light to inspect or count coins. By the way, that's also interesting. Those people who sing before Ma'uz Tzur, there's a song, Haneros Halalu Kodesh Heb. These candles are holy. Ve'ein lanu rishus lihishtamesh bahem ela lirotam bilvad. You're not allowed to use them, but you're only allowed to see them. We don't use the candles. You're not supposed to use them for anything.
And that can connect to the end.
Right, so the end is amazing, and that's really what we want. We started at the beginning so we could get to the end.
But maybe that's why it's connected to the very timing, that it's very specific when the sun is down, but not too much after, because you're not supposed to use it.
So you don't want it to be too dark.
So you don't want it to be too dark, because then you actually use it.
I think the Rambam thought more that, again, pre-street lights, once it gets too dark, no one's going to be on the street. He's so concerned to publicize it that he wants to light it a little earlier. We don't have that consideration, so we wait until it's dark. It is a mitzvah to place a Hanukkah lamp at the outside of the entrance to one's home. That's what we were talking about before. Within the handbreadth that is closest to the doorway on the left side as one enters the home, so that the mezuzah will be on the right side and the Hanukkah candle on the left side. You are enveloped in mitzvos. You can't beat it. When a person lives in a second-story apartment, he should place the Hanukkah lamp in a window close to the public domain. If a person places a Hanukkah lamp more than 20 cubits above the ground, his actions are of no consequence, because the lamp does not attract attention at that height. Now, you're okay on the 7th floor, because what he means here is that you have no roof, or your roof is too high, and therefore you put it, 40 feet up high, and nobody looks that way. But it's okay. If you live on the 7th floor, you're still okay, I think. In a time, here we go. Now we're finishing up with the good stuff. What time are we supposed to finish? 25 up? Good, perfect. We got plenty of time. In a time of danger, a person may place a Hanukkah lamp inside his house. Danger doesn't mean fire. Danger means they were afraid of the enemy. Even if he lit it on his table, it is sufficient. Therefore, another lamp must be burning in the house to provide light for one's mundane activities. If a fire is burning in the house, an additional candle is not necessary. For a prestigious person who does not normally use the light of a fire, an additional candle is required. What that means is that, again, before there were electric lights, so if you just have the menorah on the dining room table, you may come to use the menorah. That's where the shamus comes from. The shamus is not only to light the candles, but the shamus allows you to use that light, and so you won't be using the Hanukkah candles. A Hanukkah lamp that was kindled by a deaf, mute, a mentally incapable person, a minor, or a Gentile is of no consequence. It must be kindled by a person who is obligated to light it. This is extremely important, not for now, but it's extremely important. We'll have to come back some other time to discuss that. Should the Hanukkah lamp be kindled inside and then taken and placed at the entrance of one's home while it is still burning is of no consequence? One must light it in its place. That's interesting. You can't light the menorah tonight in the closet and then move it to the window. You have to light it in a place where that is the place to fulfill the mitzvah, which also is nice. If one held a candle and stood in one place, it is of no consequence, and the observer will say he is standing there for his own purposes. When a lamp was burning through the entire Sabbath day, one may extinguish the light, recite the blessings, and relight the lamp. Kindling the lamp fulfills the mitzvah, not placing it down. It is permissible to light one's Hanukkah candle from another Hanukkah candle. When a courtyard has two entrances from two different directions, it requires two Hanukkah lamps. Were one to light at one entrance, the passerby from the other direction might say, a Hanukkah light has not been placed down. If, however, two entrances to a courtyard are located on the same side, it is sufficient to light at any one of them. And now, let's see what we have. A guest kindles the light. Let's go to 12. Let's skip 11 to make sure that we have it. The mitzvah of kindling Hanukkah lamps is very dear. Chavivahi ad me'od. A person should be very careful in its observance to publicize the miracle and thus increase our praise of God and our expression of thanks for the miracles which he wrought on our behalf. Even if a person has no resources for food except what he receives from charity, he should pawn or sell his garments and purchase oil and lamps to kindle them in fulfillment of the mitzvah. When a person has only a single pruta, a nickel, and he is required to fulfill both the mitzvah of sanctifying the Sabbath day and lighting the Hanukkah lamp, he should give precedence to for purchasing oil to kindle the Hanukkah lamp over purchasing wine to recite Kiddush. Since both of these mitzvot are rabbinic in origin, it is preferable to give precedence to the kindling of the Hanukkah lamp, for it commemorates the miracle.
So here you really see how central and how important for the Rambam lighting the candle is. And what he started here, which he'll continue in 14, is one of the ways that we learn about what is important for someone who writes is when they put something as like sort of a conflict of values. So that if you only have enough for this, or you only had enough for this, what should you choose? And that's the way where they get to teach us what is really and truly important. So what we see here in 13 is that Hanukkah lighting is really important, and it even trumps here the notion of tadir v'sheino tadir, tadir kodem, what we're used to. Usually, everything that you do on Shabbos comes before any of the other holidays that come, because of the notion what you're used to doing every week. And that's the basis of Judaism. All this, all the little fun things, the extra kind of things are great, but there is something about this is how we live on a weekly basis. This is what is important. So that when we're going to see what he does in the next halacha, which is why it really just shifts everything. So here's if we only had enough money for either wine or lighting candles, we should light the candles. And then in the next mitzvah, and the next halacha, we just do it at the end. Okay.
Great deal. If a person has the opportunity to fulfill only one of two mitzvot, lighting a lamp for one's home, Shabbos candles, or lighting a Hanukkah lamp, or alternatively, lighting a lamp for one's home or reciting Kiddush, the lamp for one's home receives priority, since it generates peace within the home. Peace, he says, is of primary importance, as reflected by the mitzvah requiring God's name to be blotted out to create peace between a husband and his wife.
It's in the Ben Sota. It's in the Sota. It's in the Maim Sota, yeah.
Peace is great, for the entire Torah was given to bring about peace within the world. As Proverbs states, its ways are pleasant ways and all its paths are peace.
So here, like what really to me just is so striking was that at the end, what is most important? Shabbos candles, Hanukkah candles. Again, so you would think Shabbos candles because we're supposed to do what we usually do every week. But here the Rambam is using it and saying the most important thing is peace within the home. In other words, the whole time before we have to publicize, it's the most important. But if there's ever a conflict of values, first, it's what is going on inside the house. It's hard, and what is the proof test of God, but what is so important is what's really going on. So all of this, the mitzvah, where the miracles and we're out there and all that is of absolutely no meaning if in the house there isn't. And the day that teaches all about the military miracles, like the Rama all of a sudden gives us, it's like, when does he finish like this? The holiday of miracles, of military victory. We won, we beat them, we're this. All of a sudden, he ends the halachas about this, about peace. And I think it's like such a, I was so taken by it because it again makes us what really is important if there is a conflict. And any of the, we won the war, or we're amazing, or this, but when our house is not in order, I just wrote it now in the Jerusalem Post lesson, our house, our Jewish home, whether it's our own individual home, but also our Jewish peoplehood home, is so not in order. Like, this is actually the time for us to say, almost like, in order for me to light Hanukkah lights, it's incumbent on me to actually start working on my Jewish home. And the idea when there isn't peace, then we really aren't able to even enjoy the mitzvah. And
I think maybe this is a roundabout way of acknowledging that it really wasn't a military victory that was going to, improve the lives of the Jewish people, because it was really, sort of an anarchy against Hellenism, and that in effect, to a large extent, the ascension of the Ashmoni was not in our best interest, and it historically did not work out well for us, and that maybe we need to look at this moment and not say it was not a great military victory, it was the start of a revolution that is not necessarily in our best interest.
That could very well be, but I think it was, sure.
Yeah.
So I have a technical question, which is the lighting of Hanukkah candles considered one of the 613 to be a mitzvah? Because he's talking here as if the lighting of Shabbat candles and the lighting of Hanukkah candles are both mitzvot. And pardon my question about this, but if the story of Hanukkah is not, from what we consider Torah, technically, is it a mitzvah, or is he using it in like the way that we would use it generically, like it's a mitzvah?
What would you say? Because I don't know.
It's so it's not Hanukkah's fault that it's not part of the 613. Hanukkah just came too late.
Yeah.
So what you notice is right, and that is Hanukkah, just like Purim, is considered to be rabbinic. Again, not for any fault of its own, but so it is introduced.
Born too late.
It was born too late, right? We'll just explain just for 1 second. Since you asked a good question, you asked a technical question, I'm going to answer. And that is that Purim finds its source in the Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible, in the book of Esther. Hanukkah, for a historical reason, is not part of the Tanakh, but there is a book or 4 books called the Book of Maccabees. So we know both of the stories; they just came later. Yeah.
So the idea that if you don't have enough money to make Kiddush or light Shabbos candles and Hanukkah, you do Hanukkah. Hanukkah takes...
Hanukkah takes precedence over the Kiddush.
Over the Kiddush, not over Shabbos candles.
But because the meaning of Shabbos candles, because he's talking about there's a meaning for them. Kiddush is something, but the meaning of Shabbos candles is something that represents and creates.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like, we have funds and mitzvot for Purim and for Pesach, Ma'ot and all of that. I've never heard of a collection for people who don't have for Hanukkah, but this
Is actually,
it suggests that this is very important. That if you have to choose one or the other, you choose
the peace.
That is nice. That's right.
Yeah, just as a sort of gloss on the communitarian aspects of this, is that when he's mentioning the people that can't light deaf mutes were considered outside the purview of the community. But a blind person, he doesn't even mention that a blind person could equally work the lights because they can't see it. That wasn't the point of lighting the lights. The point of lighting the lights was so that other people could see it. which I thought was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. That's good. That's very good.
I feel like there's a reference here which I'm not getting, which is Hashem Nikatla Sat Shalom Ben Ish Lishta. When do you erase God's name to make peace between them?
Sota, when a woman is suspected by her husband of committing adultery, so she's taken to the temple, and they read the verses in the Torah that describe a process, and then they erase those words, and then she drinks this water, and that miraculously determines whether she's innocent or guilty. We can't begin to talk about that. We'll have to come back a third time to talk about that. But what the Rambam is saying is they're actually erasing God's name in order to create harmony between husband and wife. Now, that in itself is a little problematic because I'm not sure the Sota creates harmony between husband and wife.
It does, because you're sent home.
She sent it back, yeah.
She remains married.
Yeah, she.
Between husband and wife, maybe not between wife and
That's
husband.
right. So it's,
I mean, in that sense.
right, that's right. I mean, so it's an interesting idea.
It's basically a process in which the husband can take back his wife, publicly save face in patriarchal communities, when people are saying, you deserve to be shot, don't you know what you did. So that in a community where it was either shooting her or having her drink some water, and then saying she can drink some water, or she can go home, and whether she's pregnant from him or from this, God gives it its blessing, and they supposedly have a chance. And they have a chance to live together.
There you go. That's a nice note to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank
Happy
you.
Hanukkah, everybody.